Joshua Smith here, and welcome to the GSD Mode Podcast. Now get shit done and smash that subscribe button now. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode Podcast Interview. Every single week, I interview top entrepreneurs, top real estate professionals, and straight up top badasses that are out there dominating their space. These are people choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but instead to go out there and create big, amazing, epic lives for themselves, for their families, as well as have a big impact on others. And today, guys, got another rock star guest here on the show, Moses Hall. Moses is a top commercial real estate agent and broker in Chicago, Illinois, and he shares so much with us. He breaks down how he got started, how he's created this massively successful business. He also breaks down the differences between residential real estate and commercial real estate, and as a commercial real estate agent, how to have success with going out there and finding clients, how to market your property successfully, how to stand out with your marketing and stand out against other commercial real estate agents, and again, become a top producer in your marketplace. Now, real quick, before we jump into this amazing podcast interview, if you have not already, make sure to snag and download your 100% free copy of my new book, Dominate Your Real Estate Business, Top Tips from a Top Producer. You guys, it's 100% free, nothing being sold, no BS, no fluff. It's filled with just the top strategies, tactics, and methods that I've done over my 15 plus year long career that have allowed me to become one of the top real estate agents and team leaders on the planet. So again, snag your 100% free copy right now by going to joshuasmithfreebook.com. Again, joshuasmithfreebook.com. Also, if you're enjoying these interviews, enjoy this content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, you guys, and hit that like button. It helps with the growth of the channel. And if you're enjoying this content, please do that. Huge favor, huge ask on my part, but it helps us tremendously. All right, let's jump into this amazing podcast interview with Moses Hall. All right, Moses, my friend, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited to have you on, man. You're a dude that, continues just to kick ass and doing big things in the real estate industry, man. I'm excited for us to learn from you, dude.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So real quick, man, before we get into all the things that you're doing today, I know that you made some recent big changes and moves and some exciting stuff, man. But before we get into that, I'm always intrigued in our guest journeys that led them here in the first place, man. So rewind the clocks, like, why real estate? How real estate? Like, how'd this begin for you?
So I definitely have an unconventional path to real estate. Actually, I have a background in the arts. I play piano, and I grew up in New York City, and I went to all different types of performing arts schools, one being the Fame School. So if you've ever seen the movie Fame, I went to that high school. I played piano, and once I graduated high school, you know, the big thing that you always hear about when you watch VH1, Behind the Music, all that type of stuff is how artists went broke, artists didn't own their publishing. You know, you hear about starving artists. And I decided, hey, how do I monetize my talents and my gifts and not be a starving artist? So that led me to transition to Chicago, where I studied music business and entertainment at Columbia College Chicago. And so I got a degree in that field. Upon graduation, like most college grads, you're trying to secure employment. You're trying, I was interning, I was doing this, I was, trying to figure out what does my life look like after college. And so I started event space. I realized that all creatives need some type of space to showcase their art out of. And so I had a cool hip loft space downtown Chicago. I rented it out to other creatives and other artists. So I lived on one side of the loft, and then I rented out the other side. And I got to a point. It was a smaller, loft event space, and I got to a point where I started to get featured in major publications like Verizon Wireless Small Business Series, and I was searchable in Google. And I started to get calls for larger events than what my space could hold. And I began to look at I was at the end of my lease, and I started to look at other spaces, and I was like, man, I have to change my business model. I also started to look at what the owner paid for the building, because it was like a rundown kind of warehouse style, and the owner came and bought it dirt cheap and did minimal upgrades because it's a creative loft, so it's an open concept. And I started to do the math on what he acquired the property for. He put minimum work into it, and then what he was charging each unit space. And I was like, man, this guy is making a killing, because over the years, the neighborhood has appreciated and values have greatly risen. And so the light bulb went off in my head. I said, you know what? I need to be on the other side. I don't need to be a tenant. I need to be a landlord. And so, of course, I didn't have landlord money. So I thought the easiest way to get into the industry and learn is to become a broker. So I wanted to learn about commercial investments and development. So in the end of 2013, I got licensed. Started working in real estate January 2014. And that's kind of how I transitioned from a musical artistic background into real estate. Commercial real estate mainly was just because I just saw the profits that were being earned. And I said, hey, why am I leasing and not on the other end? So that's kind of how I ended up in commercial real estate.
No, that's amazing, dude. It's so cool how life just happens, you know,
Yeah.
right? It's like sometimes, like as I reflect, I'm like, I've spent so much time creating plans,
Yeah.
and everything great in my life has never happened through a plan.
Right.
And I don't mean like on a daily plan. I mean like on the big plans, you know, right? Just,
Absolutely.
yeah, no, I love that, dude. So with that, man, I mean, did you kind of synergize the two when you made the transition? Like, you know, meaning as you were getting into real estate, were you still doing the event space stuff?
Well, I kind of transitioned. I let go of the event space to kind of solely focus on building this commercial real estate business. However, I was able to leverage my network and contacts that I made in the artist community to offset my real estate career, because people respected me as a business professional and how I handled myself in different rooms and arenas, that they trusted me enough, even though it was a totally different industry, they trusted me enough to handle business in the same manner. So actually some of my first clients were people that I knew in the arts, met in college and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I made that transition from event space owner to commercial real estate broker.
Yeah, I love that. You know, and yeah, now you're a commercial real estate broker, but you also, you know, you know what they're looking for. You know the needs, you know the wants. I mean, because you live that life.
Absolutely. So yeah, I definitely work with all different types of business owners. You know, I understand retail, leasing, all these different things. And like you said, I kind of got my start in running an event space. And so, like you said, just leveraging those connections and network to build upon that to bring me to where I'm at now.
Yep, I love that, man. So have you done or dabbled at all in the residential side?
A little bit. So when I first got my license, I hung it with a more so residential firm, but I was the commercial guy. And so, of course, under my managing broker at the time, he was just training me on just basic real estate, you know, terminology and how to conduct a transaction from A to Z. And so I did do a little bit of residential, but that wasn't, if I did residential, it was still working with investors. And then even when working with investors, they were still doing like multi-units. So it might have been 2 or 3 units, but that's still considered residential. So my business was really based upon working with investors. And then as my investors grew, then my deals grew. So I might have sold an investor 2-3 unit, 2 years ago, and then now he's ready to upgrade to maybe an 8 unit, which is considered 5+ units, is considered commercial residential real estate. So that's kind of how I built my business. So yes, I did do a couple of residential stuff early on in my career, but that was just to get the foundation of doing a real estate transaction. But my primary focus was still working with investors and, doing the commercial stuff.
Yep, love it, dude. And the reason that I wanted to ask that was, and I'm glad that you've had experience, because it allows for the follow-up question and with both is, I mean, I get reached out by a lot of real estate agents that are doing residential but want to either do commercial in addition to residential, or want to make a pivot and a transition into commercial. And with you having some experience in both, and obviously commercial is really your niche and your specialty, but what are really the differences? Because I've been doing this 15 years, and outside of my own spaces, right, office buildings, like that's the only commercial experience I've had. Like I'm not out there doing. It's like, so what are the main differences So if somebody's asking you that, like what are the differences for them to be prepared for?
One of the main differences is it's about the numbers in commercial. No, it's really emotion. So, you're working with a home buyer and they're like, oh, I don't like this home because the paint in the house is green. An investor, that doesn't faze them. They're going to look at if the numbers make sense. And it's interesting you asked that question, because even today I was talking with an investor based out of New York, and he was telling me he was looking for some value add opportunities. So value add essentially means I'm going to take under rented, under market building, also that needs some work. I'm going to improve the building, and in that I'm also going to raise the rents. And so I was talking with this particular investor in New York, and he was looking for opportunities as such, because in New York, now they have certain laws and stuff where you can't raise the rents too much, even at market value, and push people out. So he's looking at different market areas such as Chicago. And what he kept saying was, I have no cap. If the numbers make sense, I'll do the deal. And so that's kind of the lingo and language that I hear a lot in commercial versus residential, where you're dealing with a lot of emotions. You're dealing with, husband, wife, duo, kid, you're dealing with a lot of things that are emotionally driven, versus with a developer investor, it's strictly numbers. If it's going to generate an income for me, then we can do the deal. So that's one of the main highlight differences, just from an overall perspective. And then if you want to get a little bit more detailed, when you're doing like commercial leasing, I know you mentioned office space, there's a lot of different terminology that's used in office space leasing, like the types of leases. You have a gross lease, you have a modified gross lease, and these are different implications on how your rent will be paid. So there may be a base rent that you pay monthly, and then there may be some additional cost that is passed down to the tenant that you pay as well. So, the type of lease will dictate that. So there's different terminology from residential and commercial, and also just from an overall perspective. Commercial is just straight numbers, if it makes sense as a business, and residential is more driven by emotions.
Yep. Love that, dude. So then, you mentioned that your first brokerage that you were with was primarily a residential broker.
Yeah.
But like you were the commercial dude, like the commercial agent there. With hindsight, man, and I'm really, for our audience that might be thinking, or that isn't commercial, wants to pursue commercial and so forth.
Right.
Do you think it's advantageous to go that route versus joining a brokerage that is strictly commercial?
It really depends. The reason I went that route was typically some of the more larger commercial strictly brokerages, they want you to come with some experience, which is hard, so which is interesting, because when I was at a pivotal point from transitioning from working under another brokerage and starting my own brokerage, I had tons of calls from the major brokerages that when I first got in, I would be dying for it, to get an interview with them. And now, I kind of, tell them that, I'm doing my own thing right now. But yeah, typically the larger brokerages, they want you to come with some experience. Typically, they want you to have a degree in real estate, or you've done an internship there, and, that different type of stuff. So I didn't feel that I was ready to just join that sole strictly commercial brokerage, because I didn't have the necessarily experience or background for real estate. So that's why I started at a residential firm. It was a boutique firm. I got the attention that I needed as a new broker, just to understand how to conduct a transaction from A to Z, and how to negotiate, just simple things that are translatable from residential to commercial. And just from there, I kind of built a name and a brand that has gave me the platform that I have today.
Yeah, love it. I got to guess another maybe bonus of going that route is all the other agents in that brokerage were probably focused on residential. So when they had to reach out, or somebody that's commercial, it's just, they probably, like, you were the go-to guy.
Yeah. And so even to this day, I am one of the go-to Realtor members for commercial deals in the Chicagoland area. I get a lot of referrals from residential agents that refer me deals, because it's out of their scope of knowledge. Because like you said, I know sometimes residential agents try to take on certain deals because they look at the payday. And however, there's a lot of liability that if you're not understanding and aware, it can come back and harm you. So you don't want to take on that liability if you don't understand what you're doing and how to negotiate certain things. As I kind of mentioned, like especially like in commercial leasing, there's a lot of nuances of moving parts that if you're not paying attention to the detail, it can get overlooked. And then once leases are signed, it can come back and, now you're in trouble. Oh, my broker didn't tell me this, because they're looking to you as the expert. So, but yeah, to your point is I was the go-to commercial person. And like you said, my managing broker at the time, he had basic knowledge on commercial real estate. So I learned from him. And then I also took courses and classes such as what's called CCIM, Certified Commercial Investment Member. That's the top tier. That's like the doctorate of commercial real estate once you get that certification. So I've been in their classes, training. I've took other certification programs such as ICSC, that's for the International Council of Shopping Centers for the entire world. So I've taken classes there. So, I've definitely educated myself. I've mentors in the industry. So I've taken the time to really understand how to do a deal. I didn't just jump into it. I took time to educate myself on how to do deals.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love it. So then, I'm curious. I mean, we all know the failure rate of realtors that are in this industry. 90% are out of the business in the first 3 years. And look, whether it's commercial, residential, and when we look at these realtor stats, I know sometimes people are like, oh, real estate's so hard. Man, it's all business, right? Like if you study the 5 and 10 year drop off for all entrepreneurs, the numbers shake out the same for all industries. So business is freaking tough. And those, first couple years are so essential.
Correct.
Because in order to create success, man, we got to be able to stay in the game. Like what did you do out of the gate, to really lay that foundation, man, to number one, not be a statistic, but to create the momentum, to create the success that you've had?
So the crazy part about my story is I've been a full-time entrepreneur since the age of 18. I started my first official business incorporated with the state of Illinois. As I mentioned, I was a musician and I was in a band. And we, like you said, at first it was just kind of like, oh, hey, let's get together and jam. And then it progressed to something so much greater where we were getting hired by our own college to perform. We were getting hired by other colleges. And I had a quick lesson of I need to incorporate us because checks were being made out to my personal name, but I didn't get the entire check. So, so these are different things. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life from marketing. Like you said, I was handling booking, marketing, transportation, all different types of things. And we were a college band, but we were performing 2-3 times a week, hired by different private companies, institutions. And so I was literally running a business. And so I took those same values and tools and translated it to the real estate industry. And so I was able to, I had savings, so I had a nest egg to kind of launch me into this industry. And also I just really I built a personal brand, and that kind of helped me build my business to get leads and get clients. And then the brokerage I was with, they were very supportive. So I think that rate partially due to one, people have false expectations. People think I'm gonna get into real estate and I'm gonna make crazy money. I see all the gurus driving their Benzes and BMWs, and I'm gonna be that next agent. And people think it's an easy check that they're gonna come and make. So people come with the false expectations that they're gonna come making money out the gate. That's one. Number two, as a new agent, you need a good support system. I had a very strong foundation and support system that helped me build my business. I think that's important as well. A lot of agents, when you go to certain firms and they have 200 agents and you're the new guy on the block, are you getting that individualized attention that you need to help build your business? And I think that what's really helped me is I learned the business, I was supported, and I was able to build from there.
Yep, I love it, man. So when you talk about building the personal brand, was that partially from your previous business and having the name because you talked about your contacts and your spirit there, or was it kind of a new rebranding process that you went through?
it was still a new, because even though I had a previous brand in music and event space, but I still have to now brand myself as the real estate expert. So it still was a transition, but I still had a platform. I didn't start completely from scratch. I still had a platform that helped me build. And like I said, I invested a lot into my business. I did a lot of things early on where I was going to events. I was flying to conferences. I was going where investors and developers were. So I had to invest a lot of money. I even flew as far as Dubai and met investors and some of my biggest contacts came from that trip and relationships that I met going to Dubai and I first got in the industry. So, it's about putting an investment into your business and growing it from there. But yeah, like you said, I had a personal brand. As people know me for being well dressed. People know me for being professional. I use social media. I use LinkedIn. I use Facebook, Instagram, and that's kind of how I built a personal brand. And then I translated it to real estate. And I even started a new venture recently. I started my own music publishing company. And so my music publishing company, we acquire the rights to celebrity catalog. So right now we have royalty rights to R&B pop artist Chris Brown. He's one of the top selling artists in the country. We have rights, we collect royalties on some of his catalog music. So anytime a particular song is aired on the radio, streamed online, we collect a check. And so we have some other negotiations that we have going on as well. So I'm still translating and branding myself from real estate guru to music executive. So, but I use these platforms to kind of grow from there.
Yeah, I love that, man. So when it comes to commercial real estate specifically, because it's a different beast, dude, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to finding clients, when it comes to, and you talked about the networking and so forth. But what are let's just say a real estate agent is, gets their first commercial property, whatever it may be. Right. What are things that you have found to be effective to go out there and promote those and I guess get those deals done?
Right. So in my market that I work in Chicago, very rarely are we getting local investors to invest into the Chicago market. So I have to do a marketing campaign that reaches to other markets such as the New York market, the California market. Those investors, they really love the Chicago market because Chicago is the third largest metropolitan city, but we don't have necessarily those high prices as New York and California. So your money can go a lot further in the Chicago market. So how do I reach these developers and investors in totally different states versus like residential? 9 times out of 10, your buyer is going to be local to the property. So I have certain platforms that I pay thousands of dollars per month to have access to get access to these institutional investors. So some of these platforms include LoopNet, Crexi, Brevitox, CoStar. These are different platforms that allow me to market to these types of investors and to reach that broad database. I know for residential, we have, our multiple listing service, and typically you put it on there, you put a for sale sign out, and that's kind of how you kind of generate leads. But with commercial, in my market, I don't really get a lot of pull in our multiple listing service. Investors are looking on these different platforms. And then also I have a personal database of close to over 10,000 investors that I've built over the years. And so anytime that I have a listing, I would just make phone calls or send email blasts out. And that's kind of how I market the property.
Yeah, love it. And then on the reverse side of it, what are things that have worked well for you to go out there and find the property owners that are looking to sell?
So for me, really, I rely heavily on referrals. And what I do as well, too, is when I get a listing, I market it to other, like I said, I use different database search engines, and I'll go find owners' information, and then I'll send them my property listing, and then they'll see, because matter of fact, today I got a call. I'm selling a automotive repair shop. and they saw my marketing. They were like, man, this is phenomenal. And this is an out-of-state person. They're like, hey, actually, I have another auto repair thing, and I would like you to list it because I just see how well you market this property. And so that's kind of how I really generate a lot of my listings, is really word of mouth, referrals. And like I said, sometimes I'll get referrals from other commercial brokers as well, because maybe the area that I specialize in, they don't, or the different property type, they don't. So I get referrals from residential agents and commercial brokers as well.
Yep, love it. And then what do you when it comes to the marketing specifically of those,
Yeah.
right? Because it sounds like you just, the example that you gave,
Yeah.
You really stood out, and they wanted the attention to detail that you provided. Because and look, I'm just going off my personal experience, right? But man, I jump on LoopNet all the time, looking at new office spaces in the areas that have businesses, and sometimes it's just a dream, right?
I get it.
But man, it's like, dude, like the marketing on so many of these, right? Like it's not up, what I would think up to par with what I would want and so forth. But like, what are things that you do to make yourself stand out?
So because a lot of investors are out of state, I make sure that they have a 100% visual of what the property is, because a lot of times they put offers in without physically seeing the property. So I have drone footage, video footage. I create an extensive offer memorandum. I have a graphic designer, and we really spell out everything about the property. I give neighborhood details so that you understand the area. Like you said, sometimes I'll do like industrial portfolio sales. And of course, if you're looking as a distribution business, you want to know the nearest highway. So I highlight highways and exits and different things like that. I take quality professional photos. And so that's kind of part of the marketing, is just really visual, and then spelling out exactly how a building's performing, where you can, like you said, even if you don't understand commercial, that it's spelled out 100%. So those are some of the things that I do, is just quality photos, drone, video, brochures. Like you said, I have a database, so I'm cold calling, I'm emailing, blasting. So I'm doing all these things to cultivate interest in a building.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, dude. So recently, it looks like you had a big transition and went off on your own and started your own brokerage. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct. That is correct.
That's awesome, man. Congrats on that, dude.
I appreciate it.
I'm going to ask it anyway. I mean, I know what led to it, because like you're just a driven hustler, entrepreneur-minded person. But what really led to that decision, and even, I guess, more importantly, I'm curious on when you knew the timing was right for you to do that, because it's a big move, and I think a lot of people don't realize the amount of work that goes in. Correct. I think us as agents, like I've never been a brokerage owner. But I have a lot of good friends that are brokerage owners, which is kind of part of the reasons I'm not a broker owner, because I know the work that goes into it. It's not as sexy as a lot of people think, right? So, what led to it, and how did you know that it was time for you?
Right. So it's so funny you mentioned that, because when I, just casually mentioned to people that, I was getting ready to branch off and start my own brokerage, especially commercial brokerage, people literally tried to talk me out of it. Not that because they had any ill or malicious intent, but just kind of like what you stated. They had their own experiences and just kind of just shared some of the ups and downs of being a broker owner. And a lot of people look at me crazy, but like you said, just being fearless, being like, hey, this is the time. And for me, just the way that life was just going, I think there's no like one moment that I can say, oh, this is it. I just had a feeling. It was just like, I'm a very spiritual individual, and I just knew God was just telling me, hey, this is the time to go ahead and start your own brokerage. And I'm glad I did, because even within the first 6 months of me opening, I had won National Association of Realtors 30 Under 30 award. And so to compete against the country as one of the top realtors in the US, was phenomenal. And I did that within 6 months of opening my brokerage. So yeah, the transition definitely wasn't easy. one of the things that people don't realize is, yeah, I can quote unquote keep 100% of my commission, but the startup costs, especially in commercial, the entry barrier is a lot higher than residential. There's a lot more fees, a lot more associations you have to be a part of, a lot more tools and resources that you have to use outside of the multiple listing service. So that startup cost was definitely painful. And then of course, the network in commercial, it's a very closed knit network. The average, based on NAR's, National Association of Realtors stats, the average commercial member is 60 years old. And here I am at the age of 28 starting my own commercial brokerage. So, obviously the odds were a little bit stacked against me, but I just knew at that very moment, this was the time for me to branch out. I had built, like I said, I had started at one brokerage that was more residential. Then I transitioned to a more full service commercial brokerage. I did 2 years there. And then I got to a certain point where I said, okay, hey, I got my foundation. Now is the time for me to branch out and do it. Part of that played into it. I don't have any children, I'm not married. So I think this is the perfect time for me to take those calculated risks and go ahead and start my own brokerage.
Yeah. What has been, a lot of times when we jump into something new, we try to do our best research and due diligence, but a lot of times there's, non-anticipated things that pop up, challenges. I mean, what have been some of the biggest challenges that maybe they were expected, maybe they weren't, that you've had to overcome, during that transition?
Part of it is, when I transitioned from the brokerage I was at to starting my own, I definitely did have to leave some deals on the table and commission dollars. So that was definitely a challenge to, because I couldn't, obviously a client stays with, here in Illinois, client stays and the listing stays with the brokerage. So, so I definitely left money on the table there. So that was a challenge. And then also, I thought my deals would come in a lot faster, but it literally, that at least the first 9 months was definitely a struggle trying to pay overhead costs. Deals were being delayed, because, typically in residential, I know the market changes, but typically, you can close on a home in 30 days. Commercial, there's so many moving parts. So many contingencies. If you're dealing with zoning, if you're dealing with this, you're dealing with that, your deals can take 120 days to close, or longer than that, depending on the complexity of the deal. And so, having to wait till those checks come in. Meanwhile, I've spent thousands of dollars to get started. So that was a challenge. Just the capital and access to capital startup was definitely a challenge and a transition. And then competing against the more known brokerages, because commercial is a very close-knit network, all commercial agents, brokers are not Realtor members, so they don't have to abide by the same rules. So how in certain multiple listing services, there will be listed a cooperation fee if you bring a buyer. In commercial, there's not that. So they don't necessarily have to pay you a cooperation fee if you bring a buyer to their listing. So different things like that was a challenge, trying to define my own as the underdog in the industry. But I've been able to hold up pretty well, build a name, and kind of play with the big dogs, as they say, in the field.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. It's awesome, dude. And I'm curious, man. And it may be, tough to articulate it just because you're experiencing it, right, and it's just been your life. But man, with your music career,
yeah,
my son, was my oldest son. I have a daughter that's older than him, but he's 10, right? That's, and he loves music. He plays the piano, plays the violin. Yeah. He just loves music. And when I watch him play, I mean, the level of mastery and the focus that has to go into that, right? Man, I have to imagine. And then not only are you an amazing musician that you had to spend all those years of focus and mastery on that.
Yeah.
Then you turn it into a business
Yeah.
right? So you're having to, master, you're having to play, but then you're
Yeah.
having to book events and
Yeah.
whatever. I got to imagine, dude, that's just sets such a huge foundation for your entrepreneur career, because so many people jump into whether it's this business or another.
Yeah.
And, like I heard a stat not too long ago that 95% of real estate agents do not spend any money on any type of additional self-development outside of CE credits,
Right.
right? Like they're not committed to mastering their craft. Like how do you feel that foundation, I guess, if you will, from, mastering something in the way that you have helped lay such a crazy foundation for your success in real estate?
Yeah, it was. And the crazy part about that, and that's what I'm just saying, life just, it has its own path, because when I initially came to college, I wasn't really trying to play. I felt most artists feel very conscious about their level of competency and how they can play and stuff like that, because you're comparing yourself to other people. So sometimes, even though others commended me on my playing, I always felt insecure about my playing. So I tried, when I first came to school, I wasn't really trying to play. And it just kind of happened that I met people and we just kind of formed. And they're honestly, my band, we're brothers. Or like we were just talking like, man, we've been knowing each other for 12 years. I've been the best man at one of my guys, my best friend's wedding. And, those relationships started in college. So somehow, I don't even know how I ended up being the point person and leader of the band. It just literally fell in place. But now that you mention it, when I look back, those experiences, imagine being a full-time college student, running a band, setting up rehearsals, coordinating events, working with event planners, transportation, equipment, all these different things, marketing the band, handling contracts, handling the money. And it's so funny because it literally prepared me for what I am doing now. I remember at 18, 19 years old, I had the foresight to create a band account. And I said, hey, I want this band, I want us to have $10,000 in this band account that will allow us to do X, Y, and Z. I said, hey, we're not going to split. We're going to do all these performances and we're not going to split anything. We're going to put this in a pot so that, because we're 18, 19 years old. So our equipment, some of us didn't have the necessary equipment we needed, or it was broken and we were barely making it. Cause like I said, we're college students, right? But I was like, you know what, let's create a business account. So I opened a business account with Chase and we started pulling our monies together, and immediately we were able to get, equipment for certain members, and we were able to, upfront, trip costs and whatever we had to do. I was literally running a business. And so now when I had to open up a business account for my brokerage, it was like, the banker saw me and said, hey, Mr. Hall, it was 1, 2, 3, because I already knew the process. I already knew marketing. I already knew how to handle. I understand that in real estate, you have to hit leads as soon as possible. So anytime, like even when someone contacted me about my band, I would respond immediately. I know that response time is important because people have short attention span. So me running a band, me transitioning to running an event space, and then transitioning to real estate, those foundations really helped me understand how to run a business. So honestly, I look back because like I said, I wasn't looking to be in a band. I wasn't looking to be a leader of a band, but all these things just happened and it prepared me for this very moment.
Yeah. And now as you come full circle, now you're, in addition to what you're doing now, you're back, as you mentioned, now in the music industry. And how'd that come about, dude?
So it was just one of those things, because everyone's like, man, we love that you're doing real estate. We're happy for you. You're successful. But man, what's going on with the music? And I'm like, you know what? I have not forgotten about the music. And the thing about Chicago is when I look at the history of Chicago and the historical aspect of musical and talented artists that resided here. And we have what's called Motor Road District. And there were so many famous studios that produced so many hits and all this different stuff. And there's a lot of talented artists here in Chicago, but these artists have to relocate to the LAs, the New Yorks, the Nashvilles, the Miamis, the Atlantas, for opportunities. So my thought process is, hey, let me bring the business back to Chicago. Let me bring opportunities to artists right here in Chicago and make Chicago the next entertainment hub. So, you know, I have different colleagues where we're doing different aspects of the industry. We have some people working on venues, and we have some other people doing record labels and recording studios. And I said, you know what, hey, let me start a music publishing company, acquire rights to different celebrities' catalogs. And like I said, I always had a passion for that, because the first person that embedded that in my head was growing up. I'm pretty sure a lot of us were fans of Michael Jackson. And my first exposure, even before I went to performing arts school and all that stuff, my first exposure to that was hearing Michael Jackson bought the Beatles catalog. And so when there was rumors about him being broke, I'm like, there's no way possible, humanly possible, that Michael Jackson could have been broke. Now, he might not have been liquid, but in terms of assets and value, he was always going to be good because he owned publishing rights. And so that kind of sparked the plug for me. And prior to graduating college, I interned at a music licensing and publishing company. So we placed different music in different campaign ads, movies, TV commercials. And when I saw what independent artists, not famous artists, but independent artists could make, it was ridiculous. Like, you know, like one band for doing like a 30-second ad, their music being played in a 30-second Advil commercial, received like a $50,000 check. And they're going to get residuals, because every time it plays in a certain market, they get residuals off that. So you tell an independent band that's not signed to a major label, that maybe has a small following, but they're not international, and you tell them, hey, here's a $50,000 check, and we're going to pay you residuals. That's a pretty sizable check, you know, for an independent band. You know, when you hear about these advances, most advanced new artists get is maybe $100,000, $200,000 now, you know. So to get a actual payment of $50,000 plus residuals, I mean, I was like, it's a no-brainer. I need to get into this business. So from a real estate aspect, the reason I like music publishing is because it's like passive investing. I'm going to analyze the catalog the same way I would analyze a real estate deal. I'm going to look at its past performance, past history, and based on that number, I'm going to purchase the catalog and expect to generate revenue.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. Is when you're purchasing the catalogs, are you able to like purchase a percentage of them, or is it?
Yeah, so there's different there's different rights that are issued in a song. So you have the master of the song, and then you have the songwriting aspect. So it really depends. There's a lot of moving parts. And of course I can break that down if anyone's interested, but yeah, essentially I'm buying a percentage of it so that I don't have to necessarily work the catalog. So there's still another publishing company that's pitching it to this music supervisor, that's getting it here, getting it there. All I'm doing is buying someone out of their contract and taking over the right to collect royalties.
Yep. Money while you sleep, man.
There you go. That's the goal.
Yeah, I love it, dude. So you know, kind of pivoting back a little bit into real estate, and I'm curious with a question that I get quite a bit from real estate agents that are getting into commercial, you know, and so forth, is, you know, one thing that's really popular in residential real estate, and maybe it's because of lead sources, and maybe I don't know if this is the same in commercial, but at the end of the day, fortune's in the follow. Like, we got to stay in touch with people.
Correct.
You know, so a question I get a lot is, like, how do you drip on, you know, some of these investors? And when I say drip, I don't necessarily mean like an automated drip. I mean, you know, right? Like, there are times where you have a deal that you know that they want, and there's going to be times like maybe they just got a deal till that's rock and roll, and then be ready to do another deal for a year or two. Like, what are things of value and content that you send them without being annoying either? Like, that they open them up and it's a value add. Right.
So what I do is I try to be the expert. So any information that I can provide that's what I will send an investor. So prime example, I'm working with a building owner, and they had some reservations about putting their property on the market. And so we've been kind of going back and forth. We've been kind of staying in touch. And I saw an opportunity that there were some rental assistance programs that the city of Chicago was offering that will pay certain tenants rents up to like $5,000. And what I did was I reached out to that building owner. I said, hey, I'm not sure if you were aware that tenants that may be struggling to pay their rent, the city is offering to pay landlords directly for any back rent owed. And so that was a way for me to get back in touch, me kind of like, now I'm providing value. Even though I haven't listed your property, now I'm providing value. Or owners are looking to refinance, and I'll send maybe an email like, hey, interest rates are as low as it's been in years. This is the perfect time to refinance. Then I'll get calls that way. So I think it's about providing value. And when you can call and say, hey, I have this that may help your overall bottom line. Hey, you might want to contact this lender. I know you were interested in this building, but I know a lender that will do 10% down and blah, blah, blah. So I think it's always important about adding value and information. So that's kind of how I keep in touch. And also a lot of my investors are connected on LinkedIn with me. And so that's how I also keep abreast and kind of have a campaign that way as well.
Yeah. What do you just make sure that you're obviously connected on LinkedIn, so they're going to see the post. Then are you just posting like, updates on new deals that you're doing?
Yeah. New deals, any market changes, anything that could be of value. I definitely share that, and they typically engage, and then they reach out to me like, hey man, I saw that property, blah, 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 what's the details? Send me the OM, so that's kind of how I've, like I said, I use Google Docs, Google spreadsheets that helps me stay organized. And like I said, I have investors calling me all the time. And so I kind of keep them abreast, and I categorize people. I know like, hey, you're looking for multifamily. I know you're looking for retail. I know you're looking for this. And I kind of go through that list and keep up that way with my contacts. And also keeping, like you say, you may not be ready to sell right here and there, but then a couple of months down the line, you'll be ready to sell.
Yep. Love it, dude. So, I'm really curious I know that this interview is going to live on forever, but at least as the time of us recording this, it's September 10th, 2020. Yes. We're still in this COVID craziness.
Yes.
And man, there's, a lot of predictions about market crashes and, and even more so, with the fear of what's going to happen with the commercial market. Because of, more people working virtually. I know, like, I heard and I don't know if this is legit or not, but I was reading an article that, and I can't remember the name of the building, but it's a building in New York.
Okay.
Typically would have like 8,000 workers on a daily basis. And right now today there's only 500, right? Because the quarantine and so forth. And, there's talks of a lot of companies doing more virtual work and so forth.
Yeah.
With that, what's your, and I know none of us have a crystal ball. If we did, we'd, own our own island and we wouldn't be here, right? But what are kind of your thoughts and predictions on, the impact that what we're experiencing now may have on commercial real estate?
Well, from a long-term perspective, our society, we have a short attention span. Yeah. So 3 years from now, I feel like we're going to get back into the groove of things. Yes, there'll still be adjustments, but you also got to think about, I know office is taking a beating. Like I personally know someone where their job was having all the employees clear out their desks because they weren't renewing their lease, because it was just kind of like, hey, why are we going to renew a lease and no one can be here? So yeah, office is taking a beating, but also it's challenging right now for employees to be productive at home. Because you got to keep in mind, you have people trying to work, do Zoom conferences, and then you have kids, and the kids have work. And if you have multiple kids, now you're trying to, and if they're at different grade levels, maybe one needs a little bit more hand holding than the other. How can you work and your kids are in school and you got to monitor them? So the productivity level of employees are probably going to be down. People are probably looking to go back to the office. But I think as well that companies are still going to make adjustments where you may not be in the office 5 days a week, but we may have maybe 3 days a week that you're in the office and 2 days you're at home. So I do think that at some point we're going to go back to some type of normalcy. We won't go to 100% normalcy, but I believe our society, we have a short attention span. We can't focus on one thing. We're moved to the next thing already. So in terms of a crash, I do believe that we are going to do a slight dip. Now that dip, I don't know how bad it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be as bad as the '08 crash because there's a lot of systems in place to prevent that now. So, because when we crashed in '08, there was no systems in place. I mean, there was so much fraud, so much everything. There was no checks and balances in places. So once that happened, that's what kind of created that bubble. I think because lenders are conservatively underwriting deals now, and everyone's being very conservative, I think people will be able to ride out this wave. Like I said, we're going to do a dip. If you look historically, every 10, 11 years or so, we do a dip in the market. The market does a correction. That's why people were anticipating that something was going to happen this year because, like you said, the last crash was like '08. So we said like, okay, it's about 11 years, 12 years. Okay, we're due. And so last fall, everyone kept saying the R word, recession. We didn't know COVID was going to hit, but surprisingly, industrial's been holding up, multifamily's been holding up, retail is hanging in there, office has been taking a beating, retail office has been taking a beating, but really office. So I do believe we're going to do a dip. We're going to do a dip, and obviously there's a presidential election. We don't know which way it's going to sway, how the economy is going to handle it. We are going to do a dip. But I think we're going to recover, within the next 3 years. By then, a vaccine will be readily available. But I do think we're going to do a dip, but I don't think it's going to be as bad as the '08 crash.
Yeah. No, man. And again, dude, it's all
right.
Our best guess. I mean, none of us, I never predicted the 2008 crash to be near what it was, and right. Most people didn't. And, but I agree with so much of what you just said, man. We have a very short memory. I was in the business in 2000 during right. the 2008 crash, and dude, you saw all these people losing their homes that were over leveraged and so forth. And I, to my mind, I'm like, this is going to be a great wake up call.
Right.
It's a lot of pain that everybody's going through. It's going to be a great wake up call. Well, fast forward 10, 12 years later, dude, now we have record high consumer debt. Like people forgot, right. And one of my favorite books, Change or Die, they talk about, how 90%, the book leads off with, if I told you that you need to make these 3 changes or else you are going to die prematurely and probably die within the next few years, would you make these changes? And we all probably think in our mind, yes, right? And then the book leads off of 90% of you, the answer to that is no. And they talk about, these major open heart surgery patients. And we're talking about people that, cut from, sternum down to belly button, cavity ripped open, gnarly scar of a daily reminder. 90% return back to their old previous habits within less than 6 months. Wow. Right? And then I look at the virtual component, dude. I think, you're getting a lot of people saying, no, our staff's productivity is up and, so forth. And in the beginning, it's fun. It's cool. And I experimented with trying to work home virtually for a year. And the first, 5-6 months, it was cool. It was something different. But by the end of the year, dude, I freaking hated it, man. It was, I couldn't escape from my home. My home no longer became a place of relaxation, rest. You can't replicate the culture, the morale. So I agree with you long term, dude. I mean, these people that are calling doom and gloom, for the work and space environment, I agree with you, dude. I think that this will be 5 years from now. It'll be a blip that happened, and plus we're social creatures, man. We want to be around people.
Absolutely. Like you said, I mean, it's so crazy because my life has dramatically changed in terms of my Ubers and Lyfts that I used to take, because I take them all the time to events. And since all these events have been moved to virtual, like I said, people are dying just to socialize, like you said, get a drink and hang out and socialize with other industry people and have a good time. And like you said, to have all that canceled is just, like I said, people are itching to get back to that. So like I said, I think from a long-term perspective, I think we will recover from this. In the interim of time, like you said, we don't know which way things, because like I said, I know we had the unemployment benefits, the COVID unemployment benefits. There's been a lot of rental assistance. So we don't know if these programs will still be there. And then also we have a presidential election, so we don't know which way it's going to sway. That may have an effect on our economy. So, but like you said, we haven't, surprisingly, our market has not seen a dip yet, even on the residential end. There's multiple offers, there's a shortage of inventory, and multiple offers everywhere. Obviously, this is dependent on your market, but here in the Chicago area, multiple offers. I mean, people are bidding $20,000, $30,000 above list price to get into these homes because there's a shortage of inventory, and there's a lot more buyers because interest rates are so low.
Yeah, and you're saying though, even as of right now, as we're kind of in the thick of all of this still, and Chicago also, not just COVID. If we look at the riots and whatnot, like Chicago has been you guys have had a lot of tough things, man.
Yeah, I've had a lot of deals fall apart for that very reason, where we were like mid-transaction and investor heard about the rioting and looting, and they just pulled out of the deal. And so that is definitely affected. However, the city and local committees and boards that I sit on, we're, like you said, we're fighting very, very hard to prevent those things happening again. I think now security has been beefed up. We're taking a lot of measures so that those things don't happen again. So yeah, because like you said, it had a lot of business owners worried. Like you said, you're only not dealing with COVID, but you're dealing with your business being destroyed. And then now your insurance rates go up because it's like you're filing too many claims. So yeah, that is something that I definitely did have to overcome, working in Chicago. But now that we've got a kind of a hang on it now, I think we won't hopefully see any more of those type of incidents.
Yeah, I'm curious, man, because I'm in Phoenix, and we didn't really experience the riots like other places of the country. But, we can't help but jump on social media, jump on the news. Like you just – but I'm curious, man, because it just seems like the media really exploits things and almost makes it look worse than it is. I mean, was it as bad as
I think
they made it seem?
The first go around, it was a lot of places boarded up, glass everywhere. It was pandemonium. I will say that it was like living a history book. This is like stuff you read in history class. Like, wait, I'm actually living this. But then of course the media does keep playing and hyping up, and it's not, even with some of the violent stuff, it's just certain pockets. Like any area, you have your certain pockets that are destroyed, or certain, things that happen in, but it doesn't speak for the entire city. So yes, the media does play a part in that messaging. And I sit on several boards. I work with the city of Chicago on some stuff. And like I said, in the state of Illinois, and we're trying to work on changing the messaging on the safety and the viability of the city of Chicago. So like I said, Chicago is the third largest city. We have one of the largest airports for international travel. We have one of the most extensive railroad systems. So there's a lot of opportunity. We're becoming the next tech hub. We've gotten a lot of tech companies to come here. We have a lot of manufacturing, distribution companies here. So it is a hub. It's a lot of opportunities for the city of Chicago. However, sometimes the media overshadows that with certain things that happen. But like I said, the city is working diligently to correct some of those challenges, and we've already seen an improvement.
Yeah. And I love what you said, man, of just because one area of our business might get disrupted. Like you mentioned, okay, the office space and retail might be down, but industrial's on fire, right? Like sometimes it's a boxing match, man. You just got to roll the punches and pivot, shift, and move, dude. And that's what you're doing, man.
Absolutely.
Yep. So I know we're going long on time here. So a couple last questions for you, though. Okay. First, man, for those that are watching and listening, dude, if they want to continue following you, seeing all the amazing things that you're up to, all of our listeners are real estate agents, throughout the planet.
Yeah.
And man, I know that we have a lot that are in the Chicago area as well. But most are residential real estate agents. So if they got referrals for you, anybody that they know are looking to do commercial deals with you. What are the best places, man, to get in touch with you, to follow you, and so forth?
On all social media platforms, it's Moses, Moses Hall, Hall. So you can find me on LinkedIn, Moses Hall, Facebook, Moses Hall, and Instagram, Moses Hall. So all my platforms is Moses Hall. You can definitely follow me on all those platforms. And like you said, reach out to me, send me a message, and I definitely look forward to connecting with all of you.
Awesome. And wherever you guys are watching or listening, wherever you're at, if you just scroll below, we'll have all of Moses's social media links, website, content. We'll have all that below for you guys to make it easy on you. So, all right, last question for you, dude. If Moses today, knowing everything that you know now, could go back and have a conversation with, your younger self when you first entered this industry, and give yourself 2 pieces of advice that you feel would have really just fast forwarded this success trajectory that you're on, again, knowing everything you know now, what would those 2 pieces of advice look like?
1, as a real estate agent broker, do not count your money until it's in your bank account. No, for real, because as a new agent, you get a new deal. You're like, yeah, I'm going to get this money. And then the deal falls apart during an attorney review period. And you know how many times that kind of like disappointed me because I didn't think, I didn't understand how challenging it is to get from A to Z in a transaction to finally, I've had deals fall apart at the closing table. So if I, was to tell my younger self something, don't count your money until it is in your bank account. Number 2, don't ever give up. I mean, there's been so many times that I literally want to throw in the towel. I literally got on Indeed.com one time. I was like, F this, let me find an occupation. But I'm so glad I didn't, because I would have never imagined the levels that I've reached when I first started, the things that I would dream about. I have some of my biggest listings. I'm like right now under contract. I have over 150 apartment units under contract right now. And never in my wildest dreams would I think that entering in this field that I'm able to obtain those type of listings, multi-million-dollar listings. So if I would have given up in my first year, I would never have reached these new heights. So the 2 tips I would leave you guys with as an agent: don't count your money until it's in your bank account. 2, never give up, and really learn the business. Learn the business, learn your craft, hone in on your craft. That will literally separate you from other agents. You know how many times I've gotten deals just because I answered the phone, because I responded to an email. Oh yeah, I've been calling agents when no one's returning my phone call, but you responded. You have my business. So it is so important to take these things in consideration. And so those are the things that I would share with my younger self, knowing what I know now.
Yep. Such powerful words, man. Such powerful advice. And Moses, dude, I know how busy you are, and we truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here, man. This has been a ton of fun and a huge honor, my friend.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, 100%, dude. And those watching and listening, as always, we thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all your support. Keep up the amazing work. Keep kicking ass, and we will see you next time. Peace. I hope you enjoyed this GSD Mode podcast episode. Now make sure you get shit done and smash that subscribe button now.